The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our presentation on Are You Getting the Most Value Out of Your Multi-Factor Authentication solution? So, before we kick off, I just want to introduce myself. I'm sure many of you on the call have spoken to me in the past, but for those of you who haven't, my name is Ian Sanderson, and I am a technical pre-sales consultant at Truestack. I've been with the company for over 10 years now, and for the purposes of this webinar, I've been involved in many of the projects we've delivered around multi-factor authentication for things like integration with Office 365, VDI, and other SaaS-based applications. But enough of me, let's move on. So let's keep this brief, the agenda for today. So what we're going to look at is how Microsoft and Thales access management solutions can complement each other and enhance your security strategy, how Thales compares to Duo when meeting your access management needs, real-life use cases, so some case studies, things like that, how others have implemented the solution, and if you've got any burning questions you'd like to ask me about multi-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication only, keep those to the end, pop them in the questions box, and we'll pick those up. Then a bit we'll talk about what this means for you, some action points to consider, and how Truestack can help. So again, I'll keep this a bit short, just who Truestack are. So if you were on the previous webinar that we ran on Thales SafeNet Trusted Access, last time we ran through what the product looks like and what it does, and we covered who we are on there. But yeah, so who we are, we have over 25 years of experience in the IT industry. As many of you know, we were formed last year, September 2019, when 3 companies merged, which was SITS Group, Pivotal Networks, and PCI Services, all bringing their own unique skill set together, from enterprise infrastructure, managed services, and networking. Our main focus is customer satisfaction. So as you guys on the call, everything we do as a business ultimately is to serve you and make your lives a bit easier. We operate UK-wide, so again, from John O'Groats to Land's End, anywhere in between. If your business is there, we can help you out. Offer end-to-end IT consultancy services, so from inception to retirement of a project, we're there for you. And then we have customers spanning most market sectors, so we're talking about housing, local government, not-for-profit, insurance, education, oil and gas, construction. You get the idea. We operate in most verticals. So, moving on. Why Thales? So, again, I touched on this last time we ran the presentation. This is the thought process and the ultimate reason why we as Truestack hung our hat on Thales as our multi-factor authentication product of choice. So when choosing our multi-factor authentication product, it was important to understand the marketplace and what's changing in there. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen in the last few years there's been a massive increase in cyber attacks and things like that, which has been forcing IT decision makers to focus more on securing their IT assets, be that the equipment or the data that resides on the servers. So with that in mind, we've found that IT directors and managers have increased their spending budgets for implementing security products like multi-factor authentication. So I mean, let's look at this. Each day we create more and more data, which is the lifeblood of many organizations. I would go as far as say that many businesses would struggle to recover if they lost all of their data. This is going on now. People have been crypto locked. They don't have a business continuity plan. And that all really starts from a weak entry point into the business, a set of compromised credentials, something like that. So multi-factor authentication is an important part of a multi-layered approach into securing business assets. Like I just said, a common attack vector is credential theft. When you think about what that person could do, say they've got the username and password for your CEO or someone like that high up in a company, they could mimic that person. You've all heard the story of someone pretending to be the finance director asking someone to send cash to a particular bank account. No one thinks nothing of it because it looks like it came from a trusted source, when in fact it was a fraudulent activity. Multi-factor authentication could stop that kind of thing happening. So anyway, with that in mind, if you know us, we like our solutions to follow these criteria. So want something that's easy to use, something that's fully featured, something that was truly software as a service based and offers value for money. I mean, quite often, if you look at something, it'll tick a couple of these boxes or most of them, but it might cost an arm and a leg, or does one thing really well, but it's not a fully featured product. It doesn't do everything that you want. So the criteria might look simple, but when we looked at the marketplace, there wasn't many solutions that ticked all four of those boxes, apart from Thales that I'm showing you now today. So as you might have gathered from the introduction and the agenda, we looked at some of the competitors out there. So we looked at Microsoft and Geo and others, which, you know, they all have their good points. They're all leaders in their own respective place, but none of them, apart from Thales, ticked all of these boxes. So if you've not heard of Thales before, part of their organization is the business they acquired when they bought Gemalto in 2019. Now, if the name Gemalto sounds familiar, they make products like passports with the RFID chips, they make bank card readers, they make bank cards, things like that. So it's something you might use on a daily basis. Oh, actually, Gemalto, but you've never really clicked on. They're massive in the security space, and Thales again also massive in that area. But more importantly, and what's relevant to this presentation, is they make things like one-time passcode tokens, those hardware tokens with the 6 digits on, that helps enable a multi-factor authentication solution. And because of that, because Thales makes those devices, we can bundle them with an MFA service, typically at no additional cost, where other vendors that we looked at, because they don't make the devices, it's an additional line item cost. You don't often see that when you look at the front page of a product, like if you look at Geo and look at their pricing policy, or if you look at the Microsoft bolt-ons for Microsoft 365, there's none of that mentioned there. So hopefully that gives you an idea of why we hung our hat on Thales. So moving on. So this isn't a competition bashing webinar. That's not what we're about. I want to just help you understand how Thales can enhance solutions that you might already have in place, or what additional value it brings over and above the competition. So before I jump into this, I think it's worth recapping what SafeNet Trusted Access is, or STAR. So it's an access management service that centrally manages and secures access to web-based, on-premises and cloud-based applications. And with that, SafeNet Trusted Access simplifies the login experience for the users. And it does this by applying flexible risk-based policies, cloud single sign-on portals, and universal authentication methods. So with that, it allows organizations to scale their business as they expand into the cloud or add more applications on premises, or a hybrid of the two. And it helps meet business compliance needs. So as I said before, the focus on security now for a business is ever increasing. Things like Cyber Essentials Plus, or HIPAA, or whatever, that you need to show that your business is compliant with. This helps with risk-based management and helping to meet those compliance needs. So again, organizations can easily secure those workloads, meet the risk management, whilst building on top of their current security framework. So it's not a rip and replace of what you have now. It's something to complement what you have. So if we take a look at Microsoft, so these are 3 common scenarios where you might be looking at multi-factor authentication, or how to implement multi-factor authentication with Office 365. So a lot of organizations have implemented in ADFS, or Active Directory Federation Services. So what that provides for an organization is the ability to, I guess, federate access to multiple applications. So you can hit one login portal, log in with the AD credentials, and then that will allow you to log on to other applications behind it. Office 365 being one of those applications. So that's all well and good, but it doesn't offer any real form of multi-factor authentication. So again, with Thales, with the multi-factor authentication, we can build on top of that platform that you're already leveraging to secure your on-premises applications. Offer that multi-factor authentication experience, and then that gives you the opportunity to grow and expand and add on more services, be that cloud-based or on-prem as you're going through. Next one I have here is Azure Active Directory. So again, many of you I know have started, or in fact completed, that journey to Office 365. It's unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, the way Microsoft's driving their customer base to consume popular services like Exchange, like SharePoint, like all those other things available in Office 365. But the enabler for all of that is Azure Active Directory. So I have no doubt if you're running Microsoft 365, you'll have an Azure AD Connect server in the environment somewhere, synchronizing those user accounts. So again, you might have looked at the Office plans. You might see things like Microsoft 365 offer Azure AD Premium, which again enables Microsoft's multi-factor authentication. You know, it does its job. It works by sending either an SMS message to a phone, or you can use the Microsoft Authenticator app. But it really stops there, and it's kind of wrapped into the Microsoft ecosystem at that point. If you've got other things to secure, it's difficult or impossible to start to secure those applications. So think VDI, think other SaaS-based applications, think about help desk systems you might be running in-house, which could leverage a second form of authentication. Azure AD doesn't really help with that, but Thales builds on top of that and enables you to not only secure Office 365, but those other applications as well. And again, that ultimately leads to Office 365. So I mentioned Microsoft there. the primary methods of authentication are the SMS and the Microsoft Authenticator app. Yeah, that might not be good enough for the organization. You might not issue a company mobile phone to your users. You might not, or do not want us users to install a piece of software on their own personal device. And again, this is where Thales sort of broadens the options for what you have. So you've got things like the hardware tokens that I mentioned previously. So you can issue those to the users. You've got SMS support. You've got email support for issuing one-time passcodes. You've got the application on a mobile phone as well, which is inherently more secure because you can't take backup of how the application sits on the phone, which is something you can do with Microsoft Authenticator. And you've got other options in between as well. So I mean, your workforce might be varied. It's not one size fits all. It's users consume services in different ways, and Thales has an option to assist those users in accessing systems, as well as you, the IT operations, enabling those users to access those systems in the most seamless way possible. So with all that in mind, you're getting better value for money, really. You can secure many applications from one central location. So moving on, we'll take a look at Star versus Duo. So again, I know a number of you on this call already. I probably had this chat with you, but for those of you who haven't, I just want to run through the bigger picture of Thales versus Duo. So I'm picking Duo because I think it's a name a lot of people have heard of. Cisco acquired them last year, so it's backed by a big name in the industry. And again, I'm not bashing the competition. I just want to explain the differences between Thales and Duo. So with that in mind, I'm going to look at the bigger picture. It's not just multi-factor authentication. I mean, Microsoft does that, Duo does that. It's the wraparound around that. It's what I'll show you here. So we've got a lower total cost of ownership. So there's no investment in any infrastructure. So by that I mean a lot of the competitors will require you to deploy some kind of service on premises to help facilitate the use of their product. So Duo, as an example, if you want to secure Office 365, there's a server you need to deploy on premises to act as sort of a middle point between Duo and your Active Directory. You've got to jump through that piece first, whereas, as I said at the beginning of this, we wanted something that was a SaaS-based platform. Thales is an all-in-one license, includes all the options. And you get the hardware tokens bundled in, whereas pretty much all the others you got to pay for that. The actual license cost is lower, and the options for different authentication types are included in that license. So if you want to secure an older VPN solution, for example, with Radius, you can. That's already included. If you've got some more modern SaaS-based applications that rely on SAML v2 based authentication, that's already included. And there's others there as well. And with that, it's easier to deploy. So I've touched on the fact that you don't need to deploy additional components on premises to make this work. It is a pure cloud-based solution. And whereas something like Microsoft might only support Windows 10 for integration with logging onto Windows, with Windows Hello, that kind of thing. The support here for all the operating systems as well, with agents and things like that. which leads on to the support for more use cases. Again, one of the authentication types I haven't covered so far is you can also enable certificate-based authentication. And for a true single sign-on experience, you can integrate with Windows Kerberos authentication. And all of this is controlled with conditional access policies on the Thales portal. So as an example, you might have a policy that says user logs in single sign-on using Kerberos, and they also have to use a one-time passcode. You have any combination of them, which leads on to the more powerful multi-factor authentication. I think I've covered the main ways that can be facilitated. So you've got push notification, you've got pattern-based. So what I mean by, if you're an Android phone user, you usually have define a pattern on the screen that you put in to unlock the phone. You can do a similar thing with this. Users directed to a web page, they remember the pattern and input the code that corresponds to that pattern. I mentioned certificate-based, email, SMS, hardware tokens. And then you can use a combination of that if you want to run true passwordless login as well. So you might enable push notification, which is then backed with like a biometric login, so a thumbprint or your Face ID to log into the system. So the point I'm really trying to make is all of this is included with Thales, whereas it might be an additional license cost with Duo or others in the marketplace. And then the last piece of value you have is superior reporting from the product. I mean, the stuff like this is often, what I find, often overlooked. When looking at a solution, you might think, oh yeah, just, does this, does MFA, tick, done, jobs are good. What about everything else that the product gives you? What about, for compliance reasons, you need to show access attempts for the last 12 months and failed access attempts, where they originated from, what user ID were they trying to use, any suspicious activity, things like that. All of that can be accommodated with the Thales solution out of the box. So I hope that gives you a flavour of why we chose Thales, sort of how it differs and might offer better value than the competition, and sort of the use cases it supports. So I'm going to move on to now. And again, as I'm going through, please pop any questions into the questions box. We'll get to those at the end. I realise I might be going a little bit quickly here. So yeah, just wanted to run through a quick case study with you guys on the call, just to bring the whole thing to light a bit, just so you can understand one of our customers' challenges, how they sort of fit in and what it means for them. So the challenge, like I said, this customer is a housing association. As with many businesses, they're kind of being forced down the path of moving services to a cloud consumption-based model. So that's Office 365, or other applications they're using are SaaS-based applications. So with that in mind, the way they traditionally viewed security was they would secure the perimeter of where the data lives, which is typically in their data center, and that would be secured with a firewall and then some kind of anti-malware, antivirus solution until you get to the core of the data. I mean, in today's world, especially since COVID-19 hit, more and more people are working remote, and the user, so me, you on the call, we are the attack vector now. It's not the perimeter, it's how do you secure the user. And that's the challenge this housing association was facing. How do we take all reasonable steps to secure the user and help and avoid a threat from credential theft or something like that. So that's the challenge they were facing. Like I say, they're moving Office 365 and multiple other SaaS-based applications. So as the theme of the webinar suggests, the solution was based on Thales Multi-Factor Authentication. So the product is called SafeNet Trusted Access. You've heard me say STAR, you've heard me say SafeNet Trusted Access. That is the name of the solution. So as I said, it's a SaaS-based solution with integrated MFA and access management platform. The risk engine in SafeNet Trusted Access allowed us to implement conditional access for those users. So one thing I didn't say was this housing association, they have a number of VDI users, they have a number of occasional staff who might only be employed for a couple of weeks or so. They have VPN users, they've got multiple ways in to the company. So part of the solution had to afford them the flexibility to provide the right kind of authentication method for each user. So for example, VDI can be secured with push-based notifications to a soft token on a company-issued phone, or they may choose to issue a hard token for those users who don't have a company-based phone. Or for those occasional users, there's a nice sort of in-between. I mentioned the sort of the grid-based, the pattern-based login to the systems. That's just a license key. You can assign it to the user. You don't have to send them a phone. You don't have to send them a token. You don't have to worry about those users not returning the tokens when their short-term contract's up. They just return the license to the pool. But every entry point into this housing association's data essentially is secured as best as it can be. And the result of that is it's minimal interruption for the users. They still follow their standard login workflows. So if you log in Office 365, put in your name, it'll just redirect, say, look, give me your one-time passcode, or I'll send you a push notification, show me your face, approve it with the biometrics on the phone, and it'll log into the service. It's very little additional information to understand. It's easy to roll out to the user base. So this was for 1,000+ users, and minimal interruption. And from IT operations point of view, it's easy to manage. Once it's configured, it's very much a click and forget kind of thing. It all relies on security groups in Active Directory, and they ultimately translate to access policies in the SafeNet Trusted Access portal. So if you belong to this group, you have access to these apps and you authenticate this way, that kind of thing. And for IT ops, all they need to do is put the user in the right group. Everything else sorts itself out. And as I said, as there's the ongoing push to use more cloud-based applications, they've got a nice platform now where it's easy to add in an application and a set of policies to say this is how you access this application. The infrastructure's in place. They know they're going to be secure from day one. It's easy. And as I've said, it supports a number of different user types. So just to recap that, final thoughts. Hopefully I've made it clear that it's not just about enabling multi-factor authentication. It's about looking at the bigger picture. And to do that, we've got the robust conditional access policies that I just mentioned. You can integrate with applications no matter where they live. So cloud, on premises, somewhere in between. It's easy to use for end users, simplifies operations for IT staff, it's cost effective, and it's all delivered from one of the big security players in the industry, Thales. It's a name you can trust. They've been around for a long time. So with that, let's talk about how Truestack can help you. If this was of interest, how we could take this conversation to the next step. So, as many as you know, I'm pretty sure I've spoken to most of you on the webinar. We can offer pre-sales engagement with myself or some of the other pre-sales team to talk about what multi-factor authentication means for you and your business. I mean, you know how the process works. We'll run through a fact-finding exercise, figure out what we can, what we can't do, and talk about ways that this might work, how it integrate, things like that. And then just building on that, we take a holistic view of the entire environment, just to ensure there's product interoperability. So if you just use some of the examples I've touched on in this webinar here, you might only be thinking about securing VDI, but we know as a trusted advisor of yours that you have more than VDI where this might be a good fit, or you might not have thought about securing this avenue. So we can jointly identify those business challenges with you and see how SafeNet Trusted Access can help. And as with most of the solutions we sell and we offer, we can provide product demos, or we can offer a proof of concept just to give you confidence in the solution before committing to rolling it out essentially across the workforce. Which leads to the last point, that we provide a wraparound service to ensure that your estate remains supported. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we offer services from inception to the retirement of any project. I mean, we'll have the experience and expertise for every phase of that project journey. So you've got the pre-sales, those initial conversations, the architecture, the design, the implementation, the post-sales, that ongoing support piece. You know, we've got a very good support team that understands these products, can offer you help straight away. And then when you get to the very end of that project life cycle, the retirement of the project as well. So for us, it's about building and maintaining that trust. I mean, yes, ultimately I'm here to try and sell something, but that's not what we're about. The customer needs is what matters to us most. It's not, here's something that will maybe do the job. It's something we've vetted internally, something we use ourselves, something we 100% hang our hat on and believe in. And hopefully that conviction comes across when we're talking to you guys about the products. We want to become that trusted advisor of yours, and hopefully we can do some good projects together. And with that, I say I've run over ever so slightly, and we'll move on to questions. So let me have a look at the questions box. Do we have anything? Yeah, there we go. I do have something. Let me just have a look at that. Okay, so question is, does STAR provide geography-based conditional access? And how granular can the geolocation access be? That is a very good question. So yeah, I did mention the conditional access. What I didn't say is really what the makeup of those policies are. So for this particular question, there's two ways you can achieve the result here. So you can limit access by certain IP addresses. So you might say, I only want my public IP presence, so your office essentially, to be able to authenticate against this service. Anyone else Now, I'm not interested. Do not allow those users to even access the service. Or you can lock down by country type. So if we're talking about specific location, you can be as granular as, say, the UK or Germany or any country, or equally you can block any of those countries and allow the rest in. And then building on top of that, there's policy enabled there, risk assessment enabled to identify risky logins in the environment. So let's say, for example, an account was compromised and the actual user, logs in from the UK, that's fine. And then 10 minutes later, someone with the same account is trying to log in from China or Russia or something like that. That's physically impossible to do by the same person. So they'll identify things like that and chop off access to accounts that it deems as risky. I hope that answered your question. So let's have a look at some other questions. So question here, is it purely cloud-based or do we need any on-premises infrastructure? So yeah, I mean, as I spoke about, it is primarily cloud-based solution. It's all configured and operated from the SaaS portal, the SafeNet Trusted Access portal. It's all one web management console. The only real piece of software you do need to deploy is a synchronization agent to synchronize those user accounts from Active Directory and into the SafeNet Trusted Access platform. So I mentioned Azure Active Directory. If you're using that, if you're familiar with that, it's exactly the same sort of idea. Just gets those users, puts them up there, ready for authentication. And last question here. So if a member of staff, so the question is, if a member of staff leaves the business, can you stop them accessing all of the applications that have been secured with MFA? So that's a really good question. I suppose really if you're using something like this, that might simplify your leaver policy when a user leaves the organization. Any application that's secured with a multi-factor authentication token, if you disable that user account in SafeNet Trusted Access, they can no longer access any of those applications. So yes, they might still have a user account active, they might still know the password, but if I haven't got that second form of authentication, it's game over. You can very quickly stop access to a particular user account. And that's it. So I'd just like to thank you very much for taking the time out of your afternoon to join this webinar. I hope you found it useful. If you do have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And yeah, it's been great talking to you. Thanks. Goodbye.